Let's start with a question. How much of your life do you actually remember correctly? Most people would probably say, well, pretty much all of it. I know what I saw. I know what happened. But here's the twist. Science says, not really. Your memory, the very thing you trust to hold your past, is full of cracks, edits, and sometimes complete fabrications. And today, I'm going to give you 10 mind-bending facts about memory that might just change the way you think about your own past. By the end, you'll not only understand why memory can't always be trusted, but also how it can be manipulated by your own brain, by other people, even by society at large. And if you're fascinated by how the mind really works, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next episode. All right, let's dive in. Fact number 1. Your brain doesn't replay memories, it rewrites them. Here's something that might blow your mind. Every time you recall a memory, you're not pressing play on some mental recording. You're pressing edit. The hippocampus, the brain's memory librarian, actually reconstructs the memory each time, pulling together fragments of what happened, what you believe happened, and even what you've been told afterward. Think of it like opening a document on your computer. Every time you open it, you're making small changes, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident. And when you hit save, that new version overwrites the old one. That's what happens when you remember. Here's a famous example. In 1974, psychologists Elizabeth Loftus and John Palmer showed people a film of a car accident. Afterward, they asked one group, how fast were the cars going when they hit each other? Another group got the same question, but with one word changed. How fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other? The result? People who heard smashed not only gave higher speed estimates, but many of them later remembered seeing broken glass in the video, glass that was never there. One single word had literally rewritten their memory. Now, think about how often you retell your own stories. That wild night out, that vacation, even something as serious as a breakup or a childhood fight. Every retelling is a chance for edits to sneak in, sometimes small, sometimes huge. So here's the reflection for you. Is there a story you've told so many times that you're not sure anymore whether you're remembering the event or just remembering your own retelling of it? Fact number 2. Confidence doesn't equal accuracy. One of the most dangerous quirks of memory is this. The more confident you are in a memory, the more wrong you might actually be. It sounds backwards, right? But scientists have tested this over and over. In fact, Elizabeth Loftus, the same psychologist from the car crash experiment, spent much of her career proving just how unreliable eyewitnesses can be. In one famous case, she showed people a slideshow of a man stealing a wallet. Later, she presented them with different suspects. Even when people confidently pointed to the wrong person, they still swore they were right. Some even insisted they would bet their lives on it. And it's not just in labs or courtrooms. Imagine you're at a family barbecue and someone brings up that embarrassing thing you supposedly did years ago. You might swear it happened differently, and you'll argue with complete confidence. But here's the catch. So will they. Both of you might be absolutely convinced, yet one or even both of you are misremembering. This is why so many wrongful convictions have happened. DNA evidence has later proven that dozens of people who were convicted based on confident eyewitness testimony were completely innocent. Here's the takeaway. Confidence is not the same as truth. So the next time someone tells you, I know what I saw, remember that certainty might be more about emotion than accuracy. Reflection for you. What's one memory you're 100% confident about? And could you handle finding out you were wrong about it? Fact number 3. Shared false memories are a real thing. The Mandela Effect. This one's one of my favorites because it feels straight out of a sci-fi movie. The Mandela Effect is when large groups of people share the same false memory. The name comes from Nelson Mandela. Millions of people, especially in the US, clearly remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. They remember news reports, world leaders giving speeches, even school teachers talking about it. The only problem? It never happened. Mandela was released, became president of South Africa, and lived until 2013. But that wasn't the only case. Whole generations remember Looney Tunes instead of the correct Looney Tunes. People swear the Monopoly man wears a monocle, but he never did. Some are convinced of the Berenstein Bears, when it's actually the Berenstain Bears. And don't even get me started on the Febreze versus Febreze debate. So what's happening here? Psychologists believe it's a mix of social reinforcement and the way our brains store similar words or images. If enough people around you repeat a version of an event, your brain often just accepts it as your own memory. And when that false memory gets repeated across pop culture, it becomes collective. Now think about the implications today. In the era of viral tweets and deepfakes, one wrong image or misquote can spread fast, and before long, thousands or millions of people may remember it as true. Reflection for you. What's one Mandela effect you've personally experienced? And if your brain can lie about cartoons, how much else in your past might be up for debate? Fact number 4. Emotion supercharges memory, but also distorts it. We tend to believe that the more emotional an event, the more accurate the memory. And it's true in one sense. Your amygdala, the emotional hub of your brain, acts like a highlighter, making emotional moments stand out. That's why most people can tell you exactly where they were during 9/11, or when they heard about Michael Jackson's death, or when the Challenger shuttle exploded. These flashbulb memories feel crisp, vivid, and permanent. But here's the twist. While the memory feels clearer, the details are often wrong. A study on 9/11 memories tracked people's recollections immediately after the attacks, and then again years later. Even though people swore nothing had changed, huge differences appeared. Some changed who they were with. Others changed where they were. Some even changed what city they were in. This isn't because people are lying. It's because strong emotions glue the feeling of certainty to a memory, even while the details quietly shift. Think about the last time you had a huge argument. You probably remember exactly what was said, right? Well, so does the other person. The problem? If you compare notes, your truths might not even match. Reflection. What's one emotional memory you'd bet your life on? Could it be that the feelings are real, but the details aren't? Fact number 5. Your brain fills in gaps with confabulation. Here's something wild. Your brain hates blank spots. If it doesn't know something, it often just makes something up and serves it to you as fact. This is called confabulation. In extreme cases, like certain brain injuries, people will confidently invent entire conversations or events that never happened. But everyday confabulation happens to all of us. Have you ever told a story, then later realized you described the wrong place, or gave the wrong date, or even credited the wrong person, and you didn't notice until someone corrected you? That's your brain patching the gaps. Here's a famous example. Ronald Reagan once told a war story in vivid detail during a speech. He described a soldier's bravery as if he had personally witnessed it. The only problem? The entire scene came from a movie. His brain had borrowed it, stitched it into his own memory, and served it back as truth. Why does this matter? Because in everyday life, these tiny fabrications can snowball. Your memory of a childhood vacation, your high school experiences, even your political beliefs, they might all contain little edits your brain created to smooth over the cracks. Reflection. When you can't remember something, do you admit the blank, or do you automatically fill it in? And how many of those fills are now part of your truth? Fact number 6. You can remember things that never happened at all. Here's the creepiest part of memory science. Psychologists can actually plant false memories in people's minds. Elizabeth Loftus ran a famous experiment in the 1990s called the Lost in the Mall study. She convinced participants that when they were children, they had been lost in a shopping mall and eventually rescued by a kind stranger. In reality, this never happened. But after a few interviews and some suggestive questioning, about a quarter of the participants came to remember the event vividly. They even added details like what the stranger looked like, what store they were near, or how they felt in the moment. This isn't just theory. It has played out in real-world cases. Some people have given false confessions to crimes they didn't commit because police questioning subtly planted suggestions that grew into memories. Others have come to believe in childhood events, sometimes traumatic ones, that never occurred. If a skilled interviewer, or even just a trusted friend, can accidentally rewrite your past, think about how much influence media, advertising, or politics might have. Repeated slogans, emotional stories, nostalgic images, they can all shape not just what you believe, but what you remember. Reflection. Is there a childhood memory you've never been able to verify, but you've always believed? What if it never actually happened? Fact number 7. Nostalgia is both a comfort and a trap. If you've ever looked back at the good old days and felt like everything was better then, you're not alone. That's nostalgia at work. Nostalgia smooths the edges of memory. You don't remember the boredom of long summer days without air conditioning. You just remember the smell of grass, the laughter with friends, the music on the radio. You don't remember the stress of high school exams. You remember prom night or football games. Advertisers and politicians know this. That's why so many campaigns lean on phrases like "Make America Great Again" or commercials that use retro music and vintage visuals. They're not selling you a product or a policy. They're selling you your own filtered memories of a time that feels better in hindsight. But here's the reality. The good old days were never as perfect as they feel now. You're just remembering the highlights reel. That doesn't mean nostalgia is bad. In fact, studies show it can boost mood and even reduce feelings of loneliness. But it also means we should be cautious when nostalgia gets used as a weapon of persuasion. Reflection. What's one good old days memory you treasure? And what details might you be conveniently forgetting? Fact number 8. Source confusion. When you can't tell where a memory came from. Have you ever sworn you saw something with your own eyes, only to later realize you read it in a book or saw it in a movie? That's source confusion, or what psychologists call source monitoring errors. Your brain doesn't just store the fact. It stores fragments, the information, the context, the feeling. But when you recall it later, the pieces can get shuffled. That's why people sometimes believe they personally witnessed events they only saw on TV. This has major consequences. In courtrooms, witnesses sometimes confuse what they saw with what they later read in newspapers or saw in news coverage. In everyday life, it's why you might argue with a friend over who first told a joke or which one of you had the idea for a road trip. And in the age of AI-generated content, deepfakes, and viral posts, source confusion is becoming an even bigger issue. If you see a striking image online, a part of your brain may tag it as real. Months later, you might swear you remember that event happening, even if it was fabricated. Reflection. How many of your strongest memories might actually be borrowed secondhand from movies, TV, or social media? Fact number 9. Sleep is the unsung hero of memory. We often think of memory as something that happens when we're awake, studying, experiencing, living. But the truth is, memory is built when we're asleep. During deep sleep, your brain sorts through the day's experiences, deciding what to keep and what to discard. It's like a librarian putting books back on the right shelves. That's why pulling an all-nighter before an exam is usually worse than just going to bed. Without sleep, the memories don't properly consolidate. But here's the kicker. Sleep doesn't just strengthen true memories. It can also strengthen false ones. If your brain has already woven in some incorrect details, a good night's sleep can actually lock them in even tighter. Think of it like this. If your brain is a hard drive, sleep is the save-to-disk function. But whatever's on the screen at the time, accurate or not, gets saved. Reflection. When was the last time you sacrificed sleep to get more done? And what might you have risked forgetting, or worse, remembering wrong? Fact number 10. Memory isn't just personal, it's collective. We like to think of memory as something private, locked in our own heads. But memory is also a group activity. Families share stories that become part of collective memory. Nations share historical narratives that shape identity. Here's an example. After September 11th, people across the U.S. didn't just form personal memories of the day. They also absorbed a shared narrative, reinforced by media, leaders, and cultural rituals. Over time, this collective memory shaped how a nation saw itself and the world. But collective memory can also be manipulated. Think of propaganda campaigns, where repetition and emotional imagery rewrite not just one person's memory, but the memory of entire societies. What we remember as history can sometimes be just as unreliable as personal memory. That's why historians often say, memory is not history. History has to be reconstructed from multiple sources, checked and challenged. Memory, personal or collective, is always vulnerable to bias, distortion, and rewriting. Reflection: what's one event you remember mostly because everyone around you does? Is it your memory or the group's? And that's a wrap. This was the Mind Lab Studio with 10 mind-bending facts about memory. If there's a topic you want me to dive deeper into next, let me know in the comments. I'll make it happen. Don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating insights.